Okay, and welcome to another episode of Tony Fuel Reads. Yes, this is a different episode to what you might be used to by now. It's not Tony Fuel Plays, it's a different series, hence why there was a slightly different intro song there. I didn't use the intro song called Intro Space, I used one called Orchestra of Fuel. And I thought it would be... I thought maybe to use the one to keep a consistency between it. But, you know, I think this is probably better having one song for any audio series I do, which this is, and one for any video game series I do. So with that said, the point of this particular episode is the beginning of me reading The Wizard of Oz. Now, let's go on to the first chapter. Chapter 1. The Earthquake. The train from Frisco was very late. It should have arrived at Hugson's Siding at midnight, but it was already 5 o'clock, and the grey dawn was breaking in the east when the little train slowly rumbled up to the open shed that served for the station house. As it came to a stop, the conductor called out in a loud voice, "Hugson's Siding!" At once, a little girl rose from her seat and walked to the door of the car, carrying a wicked suitcase in one hand and a round bird cage covered in newspaper in the other, while a parasol was tucked under her arm. The conductor helped her off the car, and then the engineer started his train again, so that it puffed and groaned and moved slowly away from the track. The reason he was so late was because all through the night there were times when the solid earth shook and trembled under him, and the engineer was afraid that at any moment the rails might spread apart and an accident happen to his passengers, so he moved the cars slowly, with caution. The little girl stood still to watch until the train had disappeared around a curve, then she turned to see where she was. The shed at Hugson's Siding was bare save for an old wooden bench, and did not look very inviting. As she peered through the soft grey light, not a house of any sort was visible near the station, nor any person in sight, but after a while the child discovered a horse and buggy standing near a group of trees a short distance away. She walked towards it, and found the horse tied to a tree, and standing motionless, with a head hanging down almost to the ground. It was a big horse, tall and bony, with long legs and large knees and feet. She could count his ribs easily where they showed through the skin of his body, and his head was long and seemed altogether too big for him, as if it did not fit. His tail was short and scraggly, and his harness had been broken in many places and fastened together again with cords and bits of wire. The buggy seemed almost new, for it had shiny top and side curtains. Getting around in front, so that she could look inside, the girl saw a boy curled up on the seat, fast asleep. She sat down, and a bird cage poked the boy with her parasol. Presently he woke up, rose to a sitting position, and rubbed his eyes briskly. "Hello," he said, seeing her. "Are you Dorothy Gale?" "Yes," she answered, looking gravely, as he tossed his hair and blinkly grey eyes. "Have you come to take me to Hugson's Ranch?" "Of course," he said. "Train in?" "I couldn't be here if it wasn't," she said. He laughed at that, and his laugh was merry and frank. Jumping out of the buggy, he put Dorothy's suitcase under the seat and her bird cage to the floor in front. "Canary birds?" he asked. "Oh, no, it's just Eureka, my kitten. I thought that she was best way to carry her." The boy nodded. "Eureka's a funny name for a cat," he remarked. "I named my kitten that because I found it," she explained. "Uncle Henry says Eureka means I have found it." "All right,"
Hop in."
She climbed into the buggy and he followed her. Then the boy picked up the reins, shook them, and said,
"Giddy up."
The horse did not stir. Dorothy thought he just wiggled one of his dropping ears, but that was all.
"Giddy up,"
called the boy again. The horse stood still. "Perhaps," said Dorothy, "if you untied him, he would go." The boy laughed cheerfully and jumped out.
"Guess I'm half asleep,"
he said, untying the horse.
"But Jim knows his business all right. Don't you, Jim?"
patting the long nose of the animal. Then he got into the buggy again and took the reins, and the horse at once backed away from the tree, turned slowly around, and began to trot down the sandy road, which was still visible in the dim light.
"Thought that train would never come,"
observed the boy.
"I waited at the station for 5 hours."
"We had a lot of earthquakes," said Dorothy. "Didn't you feel the ground shake?"
"Yes, but we're used to such things in California,"
he replied.
"They don't scare us much."
The conductor said it was just the worst quake he ever knew.
"Did he? Then it must have happened while I was asleep,"
he said thoughtfully. "How is Uncle Henry?" she inquired, after a pause during which the horse continued to trot with long, regular strides.
"He's pretty well. He and Uncle Hugson have been having a fine visit."
"Is Mr. Hugson your uncle?" she asked.
"Yes, Uncle Bill Hugson married Uncle Henry's wife's sister, so we used to be second cousins. I mean, we must be second cousins. I'm a little bit of an oaf,"
said the boy in an amused tone.
"I work for Uncle Bill at his ranch, and he pays me $6 a month and my board."
"Isn't that a great deal?" she asked doubtfully.
"Why, it's a great deal for Uncle Hugson, but not for me. I'm a splendid worker. I work while I was asleep," he added with a laugh.
"What is your name?" said Dorothy, thinking she liked the boy's manner and cheery tone of his voice.
"Not a very pretty one," he answered, as if a little ashamed. "My whole name is Zebediah, but folks just call me Zeb. You've been to Australia, haven't you?"
"Yes, with Uncle Henry," she answered. "We got to San Francisco a week ago, and Uncle Henry went right to Hugson's ranch for a visit, while I stayed for a few days in the city with some friends we had met."
"How long will you be with us?" he asked.
"Only a day. Tomorrow Uncle Henry and I must start back for Kansas. We've been away for a long time, you know, and so we're anxious to get home again." The boy flicked his big nose, bony horse with a whip, and looked thoughtfully. Then he started to say something to his little companion, but before he could speak, the buggy began to sway dangerously from side to side, and the earth seemed to rise up before them. Next minute, there was a roar and a sharp crash, and at her side Dorothy saw the ground open in a wide crack, and then come together again.
"Goodness!"
she cried, grasping the iron rail of the cart.
"What was that?" "That was an awful big quake," replied Zeb, with a white face. "It's almost got that time, Dorothy."
The horse had stopped short, and stood firm as a rock. Zeb took the reins and urged him to go, but Jim was stubborn. Then the boy cracked his whip and touched the animal's ranks with it, and after a few moans of protest, Jim stepped slowly along the road. Neither the boy nor the girl spoke again for some minutes. There was a breath of danger in the very air, and every few moments the earth would shake violently. Jim's ears were standing erect upon his head, with every muscle of his long big body was tense as he trotted towards home. He was not going very fast, but on his flanks specks of foam began to appear at times when he would tremble like a leaf. The sky grew darker again, and the wind made queer sobbing sounds as it swept over the valley. Suddenly, there was a rending, tearing sound, and the earth split another great crack just beneath the spot where the horse was standing. With a wild neigh of terror, the animal fell bodily into the pit, drawing the buggy and the occupants after him. Dorothy grabbed fast hold of the buggy top, and the boy did the same. The sudden rush into the space confused them, so that they could not think. Blackness engulfed them at every side, and the breathless silence waited for the fall to end, and crush them against jagged rocks, or the earth to close on them again, and bury them forever in the dreadful depths. The horrible sensation of falling, the darkness, and the terrifying noises proved more than Dorothy could endure, and for a few moments the little girl lost consciousness. Zeb, being a boy, did not faint, but he was badly frightened, and clung to the buggy seat with a frightened grip, expecting every moment would be his last.